Hello, everyone, and hope everyone's having a good day so far. And today we have another pretty active day across the lower Ohio Valley here in the mid South. It's gonna be another sort of tornado driven, sort of damaging wind driven risk today. But here is our sort of risk area, and it's a very large one today. We've got our marginal. Across the coast, North Carolina, South Carolina coast. Some very isolated storms possible, the Carolinas, but we have our slight risk from really central Illinois through southern West Virginia, through the mountains here, Atlanta, right on the enhanced and slight risk line. Jackson, Mississippi, Little Rock, Arkansas, also in that slight risk. This enhanced risk, very large, includes the coal fields of Kentucky, Louisville, Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee, Greenville, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, and Chattanooga, Tennessee. So, a very large area here of this enhanced risk. Here's our tornado risk today. You see our in that enhanced risk, we can see where our 10% yellow risk is, but we do have that hatched risk for central Mississippi up through southern Kentucky, including northern Alabama here. However, I do think the tornado risk is much greater across Mississippi, southern Tennessee, um, uh, Mississippi, and sort of northwestern Alabama here. So Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, central Mississippi, and then up through and just north of Birmingham, I think is the best sort of area. But anywhere in this 10% risk and even the 5% risk, need to be on the lookout for the warnings, any sort of quick spin ups possible, but potentially some more significant tornadoes possible down south across um, that hatched area right there. So just be on the lookout, be weather aware on that end. But I do think the tornado threat today is going to be very dependent on this morning convection, which I will talk about here soon. Here's our wind threat today. We do have a pretty big 45% risk here, including much of south central Kentucky, all the way down south of Birmingham, Alabama, including Nashville, Chattanooga, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Then we have this 30% risk, including Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky, Atlanta, just outside of Greenville. And then we have that pretty large 15% risk on the outside, including a lot of southern Indiana and central Illinois. Also, wouldn't be shocked for an isolated spin up across this area, central Illinois, southern Indiana. That's sort of the secondary sort of target I have in mind. Um, First one being this area, but definitely watch out for a quick spin up in those areas. And then here's our hail risk here. Um, Very just sort of isolated and scattered large hail possible for much of the area, but we do have this sort of 30% significant risk across the mid South and lower Ohio Valley. Um, that includes Memphis, Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, and even Jonesboro, Arkansas, just outside of, seems just outside of Paducah, Kentucky. But we have that 30% significant risk of 2 to 3 inch hail probably. I do think with the environment when these cells first sort of form, they will have a lot more sort of winds aloft to work with and a lot more instability to work with, resulting in more potent updrafts. But We'll have to watch this area, especially for large hail. Um, yeah, 30% risk. So here's our sort of surface map here, and we can see what's going on here. And we can see our severe risk in the yellow hatch, but in addition to our severe risk, we do have sort of a isolated, scattered flash flooding event possible across much of Kentucky, central, southern West Virginia, southern Ohio, southern Indiana, much of Tennessee. Um, but as this low pressure sort of moves off to the northeast here, that warm front's going to sort of push up north, allowing for some nice um, moisture evaction to sort of come in and destabilize the atmosphere after this sort of morning rain moves through. Despite that, we still should have some thunderstorms. Whether or not they're going to be as severe is the big question. Very well, the severity of today could be dropped a good bit if this morning convection kind of lingers on, especially with the tornado threat. But here's our sort of surface map here, and we can see sort of what's going on here. Here's that warm front right through here. That's going to be lifting off to the east northeast, and the low pressure associated with the severe weather also going to be lifting east northeast. So that's sort of what we're dealing with today in that overall sense here. Here's the current radar, and we can see this morning convection here that I'm talking about, kind of drifting off to the east here. The sooner this moves out here, the better chances the area can destabilize here. And it's only 9 a.m. across Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time here. So you still got a few hours. You really got about 2 hours, 3 hours tops, but really about 2 hours to get most of this out of here. Seems to be clearing out, rain-wise across the mid-south where we have that hail risk and the tornado risk across northern Mississippi, um, and western Tennessee here. But yeah, this is the convection I'm talking about. The NAM 3K doesn't even have this convection at all on the model run, the 06C model run. I'm not even going to use it today. Um, doesn't even have really any rain at all, so it's clearly doing not as well. The H4 definitely has a better handle. It has some of this sort of convection in northern Kentucky here, and it has sort of like a line of convection across Tennessee and through northern Mississippi here. Um, but yeah, this is sort of what we're dealing with. It is moving out in the next 2 hours. It will really depend on the next 2 hours how fast this moves out here. Um, but here's our satellite here, and we can see, once that rain moves out, we can see sunlight across southern Missouri and um, eastern Arkansas here, moving into Mississippi, Tennessee, and then later into Kentucky, western Kentucky. This is going to be key right here as this moves off to east here. So definitely going to stabilize in the mid south where that hail risk is. It seems like so definitely keep an eye on that. But yeah, we do see that clearing. We can see our convection here. Again, it's just how fast that can move out here. And we do have our here's our surface observations here, and we're gonna sort of just take a peek, really across sort of southern Indiana, Illinois, much of Kentucky, much of Tennessee. So we have our mid 60s really across southern Indiana, much of central southern Illinois. We have our mid 50s in Ohio here, low 60s to low 70s across Kentucky. So let's look at our H triple R here. All right, 13. Here's our H triple R, and it's doing pretty good. We have our kind of low to mid 70s Southern Kentucky. We have our sort of stretch of mid 60s, upper 60s in central Southern Illinois here. See here, mid 60s here. Um, yeah, I mean, it's doing pretty well. The H triple R has a good handle on our temperatures here. We can see uh, mid 50s across central Tennessee, and we do have our mid 70s, excuse me, um, mid 70s across Middle Tennessee. So yeah, H4 does have a good handle on our temperatures. Just look at the RRFS today here. Again, overdoes some of the convection. It does an overall decent job with especially same day severe weather events. This model is pretty good. So again here we have it's maybe a little warmer across a little bit across central Kentucky, very far southern Indiana, but overall pretty good handle on temperatures. Again, our dew points, we have low 70s really across central, south central Kentucky, central Tennessee. We have kind of mid 60s across Illinois and sort of low 50s, mid 50s everywhere else. Let's look at our dew points here. And yeah, we have our low 70s kind of across south central Kentucky, central Tennessee here, and 60s, mid 60s Illinois, 50s everywhere else. Uh, our FS here, and sort of the same thing, maybe a little bit further further west with our 70s, but the same overall idea here. 50s everywhere else, mid 60s Illinois, southern Indiana, 70s across sort of central Tennessee and central Kentucky here. So I'm doing fairly well in that sense. So we have our surface observations with our cams here are doing fairly well. So that is a check mark. So next, I do wanted to look at our sort of our upper air winds here. First, we're gonna start with the 500 millibar. This is the HRF ensemble mean. Love using this. So this is about 10 a.m. Today, and we can see a negatively tilted trough here across our Midwest here. We see these, um, see how the lines here are oriented northwest to southeast here, and indicating that negatively tilted trough, sort of opening up the warm sector on this um, eastern side of the trough here, which is where our severe risk today is. But we can see our little jet streak here of about 70, 80 knots at our 500 millibar level. So we move on to the afternoon by about 2 to 3 o'clock. Weakens a good bit here. We have some pretty good flow by 2 o'clock here by southern Indiana, southern Illinois, all the way down through central Mississippi. 60 knots, um, likely across much of the area. The 500 millibar level. Move on to the evening around 7 p.m. Those winds sort of in the Ohio Valley start getting chopped up and not really as um, um, significant up there, but across sort of the mid South here, we still have pockets of 60 knots here. Out through sufficient winds throughout Tennessee, southern Kentucky as well, and throughout the night, that sort of just gets pinned across that mid South region. So let's look at an 850 millibar level, our low level jet here, and sort of compare. This is around 11 a.m. and we can see our closed low across Iowa here, and we can see at the base of our trough here, we can see our low level jet, and around 40 knots, 35 to 40 knots across the mid south. Not much in the Ohio Valley, just some really low winds, 20, 30 knots. Move on to the afternoon, around 2 to 3 p.m. when convection should be starting to fire up. We can see a nice overlap with our 500 millibar winds, but our 850 millibar winds, 35 to 40 knots across the mid south here. And that's why I think our tornado risk is going to be it's going to be a bit better here across northern Mississippi, sort of northwestern Alabama, and then excuse me, western Tennessee here, sort of in this general area. Um, it's just a great overlap of our 500 millibar, 850 millibar winds here. Um, we'll look at our thermos here in a second, but that's a great sort of sign. And as we move on across the evening, that low level jet even intensifies even more by about 4 p.m. Eastern time, 3 p.m. Central time. So that's something to look out for. As that low level jet increases to about 40, 45 knots across northern Mississippi, central Tennessee, any sort of discrete storm, we'll take advantage of that, and a possible tornado is possible. A significant one is possible as well across that area. So nice overlap with that. As we move on throughout the night, that sort of gets pushed across the south and weakens significantly across the mid south. So something to look out for is that intensification in our low level jet by about 4 p.m. Eastern time. But in our sort of northern Ohio Valley, you don't really have the sufficient low level winds to have that tornado risk, but you're really close to that sort of closed low, so the turning of the winds here across Illinois and southern Indiana, um, you have a lot more turning of the winds closer to the surface. Three Cape should be fairly high there as well, so you can have a quick spin up definitely um, across southern Illinois and Indiana. So I do want to look at our sort of dew points throughout the rest of the day. I'm just going to do the HFR here. Um, this is about 2 p.m. here, and we can see mid 60s really across much of the Ohio Valley, and then our 70s, low to mid 70s across the mid south here. But we can see our warm front sort of get pushed up north with our dew points here. Um, yeah, these dew points move north, our warm front moves north, opening up the warm sector across central Kentucky, southern Indiana, especially. So we move on a few hours here, about 7 p.m. You see mid 60s across sort of western West Virginia, southern Ohio, southern central Illinois, Indiana, and then some 70s across central Kentucky and the mid south here. So we have an impressive warm sector here, some nice dew points in place for today. Let's look at our surface base cape here, or instability. Um, this is around 2 p.m. today here, and yeah, where we have that more significant hail risk is where we have that better instability in place of 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram possible. The mid south, Mississippi, much of Mississippi, western Tennessee. This is also where the greater tornado risk will be in place, including Memphis. We just have the better overlapping and 850 millibar, 500 millibar winds, and we have way better surface-based instability, um, especially initiation time of storms. As we move on in the afternoon, um, some of that cape gets pushed up into central Kentucky, southern Illinois, Indiana, where we have 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram possible. Um, Again, sufficient for some quick spin ups across this area as well. Um, you can see, yeah, it's a kind of a sharp cutoff here. When you get to the coal fields, sort of southern Ohio, parts of West Virginia, that instability really drops off. Becomes sort of scarce at that point. So, but we do see some move in across the region in early afternoon into the evening. So move on throughout the night. Of course, that sort of fizzles out as the daytime heating fizzles out, but we still have quite a bit across central Mississippi, but and across southern the upper Ohio Valley here. Let's look at our mixed layer cape here. Um, 2 p.m. here again, sufficient mixed layer cape, more than sufficient across the mid south. Ohio Valley, upper Ohio Valley, you have sufficient enough. We have over 1,000 that will be enough to sort of support thunderstorm development here. And by about 5, 6 p.m., you can see lower Ohio Valley has that sort of 1,500 joules per kilogram sort of hotspot. So again, enough that instability sort of a thin instability sector here, but it does get pushed up north to Indiana and Illinois, central portions of those states. So as the day goes on, that mixed layer cape does fizzle out. Let's look at the RRFS here. Go look at the surface-based cape. Again, we can see the highlighted area of cape across southern Kentucky, but really across western Tennessee, much of Mississippi here. Um, Sufficient cape across Illinois, southern Indiana for that severe wet threat up there, and it sort of fizzles out. So, same idea as the H triple R here. Same idea, and we'll look at what the sort of radar will look like here. So move on throughout the day. This is around 12 o'clock. We can see that convection sort of move eastward here. We can expect some sort of clearing across the mid-south, the lower Ohio Valley here um, to destabilize. But how long is the big question here. We can already see by 1 o'clock Central Time, easily we can already see some convection across Arkansas, Mississippi, the Memphis area. But yeah, by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern time, we can possibly see some banding in our winds here in Eastern Kentucky here. But wouldn't be too worried about that. But we can do see across by 1, 2 o'clock here, Central Illinois, Southern Illinois, Central Southern Indiana. We can see that sort of severe risk increase. We can see our severe risk in the mid south here. Let's take a sounding here. Sort of eastern Illinois here, and we do have a nice 3 cape value over 100. We have a sufficient surface cape, mixed layer cape, as we've seen is good. Lapse rates aren't great, um, but we do have enough instability and enough sort of turning in our winds to have a nice thunderstorm possible. Some quarter-sized hail even likely with these storms across the upper Ohio Valley. Let's get a sounding. Go back a little bit here. Get a sounding across sort of northern Mississippi here. You can see a much larger cape here, fatter cape here, 3 cape over 100. Lap traits are a little bit better there. Shear value is just also a little bit better, not great. We have a decent amount of turning in our winds, but um, yeah, this is a pretty good, decent sounding here for severe weather. Definitely large hail, sort of your large hail isolated tornado risk there. But move on across the evening there, we can see this is when our low level jet should be really kicking in across the area here. And our sort of discrete storms across the Mississippi River, some across northwestern Alabama. Take a sounding near the Memphis area here, and sort of a elongated photograph, not much turning going on. But we do have enough instability, enough sufficient instability for uh, a nice severe storm possible. So that's sort of the risk today. Just sort of mainly sort of a windbag event. A lot of those segments of straight line winds possible. But we do have a possibility for more discrete activity down in the southern area of this tornado risk, especially, and that's where I think we'll have our better tornado risk. Ohio Valley, wise, more of just a hail, damaging wind risk, across southern Ohio, Illinois, northern Kentucky. Those regions there, more of a hail, damaging wind risk. Tornado risk is there, but not great. Not great at all. But that is the for the most part, they're the severe risk today. Like I said, the southern part of this enhanced risk could be more. I think the tornado risk is a little bit more increased compared to the northern part. Really, anywhere in the slight and enhanced regions, be weather aware for isolated tornadoes, large hail, especially in mid south, and damaging winds, especially lower Ohio Valley and across the south here. Hope everyone stays safe today and has a great day. I will be back soon with another video. Uh, Catch you guys later.